Let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at human history not as some random series of events, but as a completely predictable cycle. And more importantly, we're going to use a really fascinating scientific lens to examine how artificial intelligence is hyper-accelerating these historical cycles of wealth and societal instability. So, if you've ever felt like the world is just spinning faster than ever before, well, the data we're about to explore explains exactly why that's happening. To make sense of all these complex concepts, we're going to follow a clear roadmap. We'll hit the science of historical collapse, the wealth pump mechanism, AI and the knowledge class, upgrading the model with AI, and finally, the geopolitical terminal phase. Starting with Section 1, the science of historical collapse, we're going to arm you with a novel scientific tool used to study history.
To understand where we're going, we first have to understand the framework of Cliodynamics. This field, which was heavily developed by researcher Peter Turchin, basically treats human history as a dynamic, predictable system. It's a lot like how a physicist studies thermodynamics. Instead of just memorizing dates and the names of old kings, Cliodynamics uses math to find the hidden structural rhythms behind the rise and fall of civilizations. And amazingly, Turchin actually used this exact mathematical modeling way back in 2010 to accurately predict the massive societal unrest we've been seeing throughout the 2020s. Crazy, right?
Under the demographic structural model, you can think of society as an engine with three massive gears: the state, the elites, and the general population. Now, as long as these three primary moving parts turn smoothly together, society is perfectly stable. But when the ratios get out of whack, the engine literally tears itself apart.
Which brings us to Section 2, the wealth pump mechanism. It's really interesting to see exactly how those societal parts begin to grind against one another to create friction.
The model reveals a repeating chronological sequence of societal breakdown. It almost always starts with stagflation, stagnant growth combined with inflation. And this triggers what researchers call the wealth pump. It's a structural mechanism that begins to systematically divert economic gains away from the producing workers at the bottom and pumps it straight to the top.
The direct long-term consequence of this wealth pump is popular immiseration. When all the economic gains are pumped upward, the general population is systematically drained of its resources. Real wages decline, living standards shrink, and naturally, public resentment toward ruling institutions begins to boil over. Sound familiar? This right here is the structural foundation for social unrest.
But here's where the model gets truly fascinating. As the wealth pump hyper-concentrates all these gains into the upper class, it creates something called elite overproduction. Peter Turchin identifies this in his 2023 book, End Times, as the absolute critical driver of systemic collapse. Simply put, wealth creates more elites. But society only has a fixed number of ruling positions, right? There are only so many corporate board seats, law partnerships, or political offices available. It turns into a very high-stakes game of musical chairs.
So what happens when the music stops and there aren't enough seats for this swollen upper class? Well, the excluded, highly credentialed individuals become counter-elites. They're angry, they're highly educated, and they look at that frustrated general population we talked about a moment ago, and they weaponize that public immiseration. These counter-elites step up to organize radical movements to tear down the very system that denied them a seat at the table.
Okay, Section 3, AI and the knowledge class. The crucial point here is, what happens when we drop modern artificial intelligence right into the middle of this historical cycle?
Unlike the Industrial Revolution, which replaced physical muscles and blue-collar labor, the AI revolution does the exact opposite. It directly targets cognitive, white-collar work. And more specifically, it targets the entry-level apprenticeship layer of the elite class. We're talking about the junior lawyers, the junior coders, the data analysts.
And this isn't just theory. Looking at exact institutional data from Goldman Sachs' 2023 and 2024 economics reports, the exposure to automation in these traditional knowledge class sectors is absolutely massive. With 44% of legal tasks and 46% of administrative tasks highly exposed, we're looking at the potential structural elimination of the very jobs that historically served as the entry point to elite status. The robot isn't coming for the factory worker, it's literally coming for the junior partner.
Stanford's Eric Brynjolfsson calls this the Turing trap. He points out that AI is currently being used to completely replace human labor rather than just make workers more productive. This dynamic perfectly frames the macroeconomic justification for Turchin's model right now. The result? A hypervelocity wealth pump. By completely removing human labor costs in cognitive fields, AI compresses what used to take decades of traditional wealth concentration into mere years. Think about it. If a company replaces a whole floor of analysts with an AI model, human labor costs drop to near zero, while the profit margins for the capital owners just grow exponentially.
This hypervelocity pump creates a terrifyingly efficient modern counter-elite pipeline. Just think about the conditions we're brewing here. You have a massive class of individuals saddled with immense university debt. They're stepping into a rapid AI-driven job market contraction. They're highly educated, they're technologically fluent, and yet they are systemically locked out of power. Because of their technical skills, they're uniquely equipped to build decentralized counter-institutions to disrupt the state. They are, for sure, the ultimate counter-elites.
Moving to Section 4, upgrading the model with AI. Interestingly enough, AI isn't just the catalyst for this societal disruption, it's actually the very tool modern scientists are using to study it.
The entire field of cliodynamics has evolved. The traditional math has been upgraded to AI cliodynamics, which utilizes nonlinear, agent-based models driven by large language models.
Let's break down what these agent-based models actually are. Instead of just crunching spreadsheets, researchers can unleash millions of autonomous AI agents to simulate complex human behavior, greed, and cultural shifts in real time. Using generative AI, they can perform semantic extractions from millions of pages of unindexed historical texts, things like ancient grain prices or rebellion frequencies, through a method known as the dark archive. It's basically simulating the rise and fall of societies inside a supercomputer. Ironically, you could say AI is even coming for the jobs of the historians studying this.
Finally, Section 5, the geopolitical terminal phase. This brings us to where we analyze the ultimate theoretical destination of all these systemic forces colliding.
I want you to consider this question deeply because it unravels the core mechanism that has stabilized human societies for centuries. What actually happens when the top of the pyramid no longer requires the bottom of the pyramid to function? Seriously, just think about that for a second.
Throughout all of history, survival forced elites to compromise with the general population. They had to strike a balance, right? Because they required mass human labor to generate taxes, and they needed mass human bodies for military defense. But with the rise of sovereign AI networks and autonomous drone infrastructure, that historic equilibrium is completely broken. Automated systems threaten to detach elite survival entirely from public compliance. This leads to what researchers ominously call the God King scenario. Stripped of the need for human labor or a citizen military, the historic structural feedback loops that force wealth redistribution disappear entirely. The model points toward a terminal phase of permanent technocratic autocracy. And this leaves us with a truly vital question to ponder. How do we navigate a future where the historical leverage of the working public vanishes entirely? It's something we all absolutely need to be thinking about as this technology continues to accelerate.